Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Mr. Peabody and Sherman, which was shown at the CineStar movie theaters at Potsdamer Platz. The film was directed by Rob Minkoff, it was produced by Alex Schwartz and Denise Nolan Cascino, it was written by Craig Wright, it was based on the animated segments called Mr. Peabody's Improbable History, or Peabody's Improbable History by Ted Key, which was basically part of the J. Ward animation shorts of the 60s. And it stars Ty Burrell, Max Charles, Ariel Winter, Leslie Mann, Stephen Colbert, Allison Janney, Patrick Warburton, and Stephen Tobolowsky, and Dennis Haysbert. And since this is an animated feature, this was animated by DreamWorks Animation alongside Pacific Data Images and Bullwinkle Studios, and it was edited by Michael Andrews, with music by the great Danny Elfman. Now, I have something to confess right here and now. I've never really watched a lot of shorts from Peabody's Improbable History. The only J. Ward shorts that I've watched ever since I was a kid was basically Rocky and Bullwinkle and some George of the Jungle for good measure. And I have seen some of his films that were also adapted into live action, my personal favorite being George of the Jungle. However, with Rocky and Bullwinkle, the part CGI and part live action movie of 2000, I didn't really care for that. I wasn't really interested in seeing it at the time. And I don't really care for Dudley Do-Right. I never really cared for that movie, mostly because I didn't see it. And among all the J. Ward shorts that were adapted into movies, I have to say George of the Jungle was pretty much the best one that I've seen. And the only experience that I've had with Sherman and Peabody was basically in this segment of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, in which Homer Simpson was traveling through time, and wherever he goes, he messes things up, and history gets screwed up, like to such weird and very crazy measures. And then comes a cameo made by the ever famous duo Sherman and Mr. Peabody, where I remember that Sherman basically said, "That's right, Mr. Peabody," after Homer says something about the whole time traveling thing, and Mr. Peabody says to Sherman, "Quiet you." That's my only experience that I've had with this duo in particular. However, after seeing this film, I have to say, it was really, really enjoyable. Everything about it just screamed fun and excitement. Now, story-wise, sure, the whole concept of time traveling and troubled kids and history doesn't really feel so new for me. In fact, I'm a big fan of Time Squad, and that's pretty much the only time traveling show that I watched that I really, really like. And like I said, it's really fun. It's nothing really fresh because, sure, some of the characters we know have been existing in other forms of media, but it promises in a lot of comedy and a lot of action, a little bit of romance, but it's mostly the comedy that really makes this movie shine, and mostly self-aware humor and a lot of puns. Basically, the comedy in this movie mostly relies on self-aware humor and a lot of puns. And sure, there was a running gag in which certain characters, most notably Sherman, basically understands what Mr. Peabody says, but after that he says, "I don't get it." And it's just really fun sometimes. Not to mention, a big standout is basically the climax of the movie, where we see all of these historical figures like Agamemnon, Marie Antoinette, Leonardo da Vinci, King Tut. They all say that they are dogs, and they're trying to find a way to close the cosmos. That scene basically reminded me of the final boss fight from Gurren Lagann, having all of these different characters in one epic showdown. Now, I thought was just absolutely great, but it all ends up with Sherman and Peabody rectifying the errors of what happened with their time travel escapades. But still, it would have been cool to see all of these characters band together in one epic fight. It would have been really cool because, let's face it, I myself am a huge fan of Gurren Lagann. I'm not really a big fan, but I really like Gurren Lagann. And that scene in particular really reminded me of the final boss fight of Gurren Lagann, in which Zimon, Nia, and every other character in the show, basically the good guys, basically band together and defeat the big boss. Now, I thought was absolutely great, and this scene in particular basically reminded me of that scene in Gurren Lagann. So overall, the story may at times not be anything new or fresh, but it does promise a lot of comedy, a little bit of touching moments, a little bit of romance, and some history for your kids as well. Especially if they really want to get into history so badly, or if they think that history is quite boring. This film will no doubt make your kids very interested in history. Sure, some of the historical references may seem kind of off, but come on, this is a comedy. Sometimes you might as well just put your brain off and sometimes just enjoy the hell out of this movie because, seriously, as I said before, this movie was definitely enjoyable in terms of story and in terms of writing as well. And this is coming from someone who hasn't really watched that many or who wasn't raised with the Peabody shorts growing up. Now, like I said, the writing was very solid. It basically relies on a lot of comedy, and when it comes to the touching moments, I thought they were really great. But it's the comedy that sells it with this movie. Now, animation wise, this film is very colorful. The characters do have this cartoony look, but that can be pretty forgivable because it's a wonderful, fantastic universe that they're in. And like I said, the animation is very colorful, very fluid. There are no moments where it doesn't feel so choppy or inconsistent. It's very consistent. Not to mention the visual effects, I thought were very well handled. Whether it's slow mo or water or speed lines, they were all handled very well. Now, the characters are what really makes this movie so enjoyable. Sure, Sherman does start off as a very troubled kid, and he's basically the type of kid who tries to prove that he is more than what he usually is as a person. And we can easily sympathize with him, especially in school, because let's face it, who hasn't really been bullied before when they were kids? Sure, Sherman makes me sympathetic towards him because we all went there. We all had instances in our lives that we were bullied and we were looked down upon even though we do try our hardest in school or in life to show that we're very capable people. And sure, there are times that he's quite scared, but he plucks up the courage. I mean, he's still a very young boy, and he's quite a sympathetic character, and very likable at that. Now, Mr. Peabody, sure, it's very easy just to look at him as some Gary Stew, but it's all explained in his backstory in the beginning of the film. Sure, he was very intelligent. He reads very well. He's very articulate. And He is very, very intelligent for someone who's usually canine, and but he's very different from normal dogs. Hence, he didn't get adopted. So he pursues many fields like athletics, academics, many fields in his years of study, and has become very willing to take care of Sherman no matter how hard life is going to be for the both of them. Sure, it's very easy to write him off as some Gary Stew, but Mr. Peabody is another likable character. He is definitely caring towards Sherman, and he's also very concerned for his well being, like how every father should be. And he's not only knowledgeable about certain topics, but he's also very witty. And that's what I really like about this type of character, especially when it comes to comedy. He uses a lot of dry wit and some sarcasm, and I honestly find it very entertaining. I didn't find anything so mean spirited in him, unlike Brian from the later seasons of Family Guy. But yeah, he's definitely a great character, and I could really see him be such a fantastic role model to a lot of people everywhere. And he's definitely another great animated role model, in my opinion. Now, with Penny, sure, she starts off as this snooty, stuck up little rich girl. Sure, it's quite easy to write off these characters because of their stereotypes, but during the course of the film, she gets a lot better as a character. We kind of find out a lot more about her personality, but the thing of the matter is, we don't really find out that much about how her family life is with her parents. Do they um, do they pressure her? Do they pamper her a lot? Do they truly love her? This and that. But sure, they do love her. But other than that, we don't really see her family life because let's face it, this is basically Peabody's and Sherman's movie. But still, it would have been very interesting to see more of Penny, of how she is as a person, how she is in her family, how her parents are towards her, because I would have had a lot more depth into Penny. But other than that, she's still an okay character. She's still a very likable character. She's smart, she's witty. Sure, she can be quite mean, but throughout the course of the film, she becomes a better person through time. And she's very adventurous and spunky as well. So that makes me really enjoy her as a character. Now, Mrs. Grunion, I didn't really like her as a character. I pretty much hated her guts because not only was she a cruel, nasty type of witch of a person, but I felt like she was so forced into the story. Like the creators thought that they really needed an antagonist or another obstacle to this story of time traveling and encountering a lot of um, foes, friends, and people through time. I thought she was very shoot into the story, and her presence kind of made me grind my teeth and made me just scream, bitch, 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 bitch in my mind to no end. Yeah, sure, she's definitely a character that I could easily hate, though I won't spoil anything for you, but she does get slightly better even though it is later in the movie. But still, that doesn't really excuse her of her actions in the first few acts. I don't really care for her as a character because I definitely felt that she was basically shooed in. Now, the other characters are definitely a lot of fun. Now, this movie promises a lot of very colorful secondary characters, and my personal favorites among them were Leonardo da Vinci because he is just so eccentric and so fun. Mona Lisa because of her don't mess with me attitude. And when she sees Peabody's head in one of Leonardo's paintings, she starts to laugh. But my most favorite out of the bunch definitely has to be Agamemnon. And in this film, he's like the boisterous, brawny, dumb muscle who apparently is a commander of the Greeks. And I thought he was just a lot of fun to watch with his acts of manliness and his booming voice and just how macho he is as a character. I thought he was just very entertaining to watch. And sure, Marie Antoinette and Robespierre were both very fun to watch as well. And I really, really loved the climax with all of them. I thought it was just wow. It, like I said, it really reminded me of Gurren Lagann. So yes, the characters in the movie were all colorful, all likable, with the exception of Mrs. Grunion, who I definitely felt was quite shoehorned into the story. But other than that, they all have a certain charm that I definitely really like from them. Now, with the music, you can never ever go wrong with Danny Elfman. He is a master when it comes to composing for animated films and even for some live action films. And what I do notice is that a lot of the films, or excuse me, a lot of the compositions that he made for films were basically for animated movies, whether they're stop motion, CGI, or 2D, and some live action movies. The one film that comes on the top of my mind is basically The Nightmare Before Christmas, where he not only composed the songs, but also portrayed one of the characters in the movie. And here, I definitely thought that the music was just fantastic. And Danny Elfman certainly outdid himself when it comes to the music. I mean, I feel like he's always outdone himself. He's been always giving us such great and memorable music. And sure, the music in this film, great. Just great. So, overall, despite a few nitpicks of this movie, like a story that's not entirely original and the addition of Mrs. Grunion, I thought this was so much fun, and it's definitely introduced me to the world of Mr. Peabody and Sherman. And if you have kids who have never heard of Mr. Peabody and Sherman, or if you've never really heard of Mr. Peabody and Sherman yourself, or like the animated shorts of the 60s, then by all means, go ahead and give it a try. You will not be disappointed, especially with the cast of colorful characters and a lot of the situations they get themselves into. With that said, I give this film a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is a must see. This is definitely excellent on a lot of levels. Sure, there were some nitpicks, but those can be forgivable. So go ahead and see this movie if you haven't already. And if you haven't really watched the Peabody shorts from the 60s, then, like I said, go ahead and watch this film. You will not be disappointed, and it will offer you a lot of laughs and some very touching moments. And there, and before I forget, the acting was very stellar. Ty Burrell does a fantastic job as Mr. Peabody. Ariel Winter was able to play off a lot of Penny's snark. Max Charles plays um, Sherman's naivete and sweetness and his intelligence very well. Leslie Mann and Stephen Colbert make great parents. Allison Janney, even though I didn't really like her character in the film, was quite intimidating as Mrs. Grunion. But Patrick Warburton was a lot of fun as Agamemnon. His line delivery was just amazing. I mean, where can you go wrong with Patrick Warburton, whether it's comedy or drama? Mostly comedy. You can't go wrong with him. It's mostly due to his booming bass baritone voice, which he uses for a lot of imposing characters, yet at times can use it for some comedic characters. And this is a combination of both. He was able to play Agamemnon's ferocity, manliness, macho nature, and at times his boisterous and dumb muscle nature to a T. So, in conclusion, go see this film if you haven't already seen it. If you haven't really heard of the Peabody shorts, um, go ahead and watch it anyway. This is a must see, and that's all I can say. This is a great recommendation for anybody who is a fan of animation, or even for anybody who is a fan of the Peabody shorts from the 60s. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in to my next review, which is going to be later, where I'll be reviewing Donizetti's Lucia della Marmore, which was shown at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Until then, see you later.